Hi, Summer here from the Pine River Library, and I'm going to be going over this puzzle that I gave everyone, this taxonomy puzzle. So this challenge is really going to get you thinking like a scientist. These are a made-up species of pond snails. Some of them are living, some of them are fossils that we found in the fossil record. And we know how old they are. So there's a couple of different cool dating techniques for figuring out how old something is. You can use carbon dating up to a certain age. And that's kind of like the more recent one. It's a little bit more fine-tuned. Or materials that are unstable. We typically think of them as being radioactive because they're breaking down and they're unstable, but they break down at like very predictive rates. So if we can tell how long it's been since it's been breaking down, we can tell how old something is. Another really cool one to do is there's one where you can figure out how long it's been since a material has seen the light. So they use that a lot in caves. So you can like drill in and like figure out how long it's been since it's been like touched by light, because it kind of like gets reset every time it sees light, or reset every time it's heated up really hot. So there's a lot of techniques. Typically when you go further back in the fossil record and get way far away from us, these techniques aren't so specific. So they'll give us date ranges. We'll get a date range rather than a more specific number. And with everything, there's like a range, but it can be a few hundred, 1,000 years to like maybe a few million years as a date range. All right. So that's my little science rant on how we figure out how to actually like figure out how old something is. So we find them, and then what we do is we start trying to piece this together by what do they look like? What kind of features do they have? So fossils are really cool because we can look at things like bone or teeth, and we can tell like, what did they eat? How did they move? How big were they? Was there a lot of muscle there? So something that's cool, if you have a dog, you'll notice if you're touching them on their head, they have this little like ridge right here. And that's because they have really, really strong jaw muscles, which means that they're really crunching into stuff. Something that's interesting about dogs and cats, to be really careful when you're doing this, but like right behind our eyes right here, we have bone all the way around our eyes. That's something that's unique. Not all mammals have this. These guys actually don't have that. So you can check it out and see. There's a lot of cool things that we can figure out from what things look like, how they moved, what they ate, and a lot of other features too. So this is why I gave you these little list of guys. You can look at them and you can see differences. And like, this guy's got little wings. That's interesting. I wonder if that's part of how he moved. Some of these guys have shells and some of them don't. So like, this guy has a shell, but some of the ones that look like this don't have shells. Most of these guys have shells. So I'm going to say like, maybe it's important that they have protection. Maybe they needed that within their environment. Maybe the ones that didn't have shells just got nommed up really easily. Potentially. Who knows? Although there's still living ones without shells. So maybe it wasn't like a huge difference. Maybe it was just by chance that ones with the shells kind of reproduced more. It wasn't because anything in the environment made it easier or better for them. It just happened that way. And sometimes that's what happens, like weird things. So humans, right, we're all mammals, but the thing that separates primates, which is monkeys, apes, humans, from all the other mammals, and the only thing that really separates us, like we can talk about teeth and all these other things, and but the thing that really separates us is like there's a little bone in our ear that does nothing. And that's the thing that officially separates all the primates from all the others. So what's really cool to me about species is that when you get down to the species level, and even Darwin thought this, that there's very like little difference. So we say things like, this species is different from this species, but it's really hard to say something like that for sure. A really cool example is there are these like salamanders that live in California, and they're called a ring species. So they live all around this mountain range, each one right next to each other. So think of it as like we have A, B, C, D, E, F, right? A and B can interbreed, A and C can't. But B and C can. But B and D can't. So it's a really interesting conundrum of like, where do we draw that line? And then when you get all the way around, when they're all like F and G, they definitely can't interbreed. They look really different. We'd easily identify them as different species. They can produce offspring of the same species. Another one to think of is like when we have donkeys and horses. They can produce offspring, mules, but those can't produce any offspring. So we don't really think of them as the same species because mules can't continue to produce species. You can also start thinking of it outside of like, not everything needs to reproduce, right? So we have this bacteria, Giardia. It can just split in half. So how do I define that then? And some of these guys are like really bad for humans. You get Giardia, you get really sick. Certain strains. Other strains do nothing. So do we do it based on function? And then you look in the fossil record and you're like, I don't know if they could produce offspring or not. That's a skeleton. It's a fossil. How am I supposed to know? So there's so many different ways in which we can think about and challenge our definitions, and that's what I love about science. I love thinking about like the what ifs and how do we really know and what's really going on here. So a lot of this is developing our critical thinking skills, our problem solving skills, and it's really fun because like science is creative, and that's what I love about science, is being able to challenge these boundaries, being creative when we think about it. So let's dig into this one. And I don't want people to be intimidated because I've said things like taxonomy or big words. Like, it's really simple concepts. And you can really, all we're doing is we're just sorting things based on how they look. And we're thinking about like, well, how does this look? And then we're taking that into time. So we're time traveling scientists. All right. So let's get rolling with this. So what you're going to be starting with is these living species. So they all have numbers on them, but no parentheses. That means that these are the current living ones. These guys with the parentheses underneath, this has a 5. That means 5 million years ago. That's when it was alive. So I'm going to set those off to the side for now. And I'm going to focus on just my living ones. And I'm going to start sorting. So these guys, they're round. They have these round little shells. They have these cute little tails. I'm seeing some differences in eyes, right? So this one only has 1. This one has 2. This one also has 2. So I've got those. All right, this one also has 2. Really, oh, these are actually, wait. I'm looking at millions of years ago. See, this one's 3 million years. This one is 2 million years. So set it off to the side again. So we've got these guys. I've got these guys, little flat ones, little tiny arms, no eye spot at all. So that's interesting. These guys are super long. So I'm going to put them over here because everything else looks very similar to these guys except for the fact of how long they are. So these guys are the short little flat ones. These are the long flat ones. Here's a short little flat one. All right. And then these guys, they've got cute little patterns on their shells. Some of them have elbows. Some of them have straight little arms. Oh, some of them have cute little claws. These guys are interesting because they kind of look like these guys over here. Their shell looks like these guys, right? It's not marked. But their faces and their little arms look like these guys. So I think that's really interesting. Sorry, my paper's got a little dirt on it. My kitten decided to jump up and get all over this. All right, so I've got like essentially my different groups. I need to group these guys out a little bit more because I've got some guys that are just free reaching, super cute little guys, their arms straight out. I've got some over here that have elbows, looking like they're moving a little bit easier and faster. This guy kind of looks like a little in-between guy, right? He's got the claws, but not the elbows yet. These guys kind of like look somewhere in between. I would actually put these guys on the other side of here. I could put them on the other side. So I'm thinking of like when I line these guys up, I've got I could put them over here or over here. But something that I really notice about them is that they have eyes, like these guys do. I guess potentially. Also think of these guys as going in a like kind of similar spot to these guys as being like this was one direction species went, this is another direction species went. So how you line them up is up to you, and you may change it as you go through the fossil record. Oh, I need to like, some of these guys have really flat little heads, and I'm going to put them closer to these guys because maybe they're trying to like shrink their heads down to have these little round cute heads, so they're kind of going in that direction. So this is all up to you. You can totally move this and change this however you want. Before you paste any of these guys down, if you choose to do it, if you want to do it like that, you need to, or I would suggest you could finish here. If this is like, yeah, okay, I was done. But you could also challenge yourself and go back in the fossil record. So we've got 1 million years. So we'll want to have all of these guys kind of on the same plane when we start going back in time. So this is current. We'll have like another strip that's 1 million years ago. So for the 1 million years ago, I'm going to kind of like line this guy up here. Because honestly, I see almost no difference. The only difference I see is this guy has a little bit smaller of a snoot than this guy does. Nose a little bit smaller. And then we can keep going back in time. So here's 2 million years. So, oh, this guy looks so similar to this guy. So I'm going to make sure he's lined up with this guy. This guy here, he's 5 million years old. He looks a lot like this guy without a shell, so I'm going to move him back in time. And actually even more so, because that's 5. I've got a 3 million year old one here. It's got the little 3 under the number 53. That's how I know he's 3 million years old. He's got elbows, cute little shell pattern. To me, he looks a lot like this guy. So I'm going to move him back here. That's my 3 million year old one. Here's I'm going to move up a little. So, and you may start doing this and realize that you want to switch around some of your living ones. They're also known as like the extant is like the current living ones. Extinct are the dead ones that aren't alive anymore. Extant are the ones that are currently living. Cool little word if you don't know about it yet. And just enjoy. Like, this is a fun sort of puzzle with no right or wrong answer, but it's getting you to think like scientists and start sorting things and thinking about like, what is it that we care about when I'm sorting stuff? Like, you may decide that the pattern on the shell isn't that important. That whether or not they have coloration on the shell, what's more important is their little arms, how they're moving, because like maybe patterning doesn't matter at all. Or maybe it's a really important thing that is like attracting mates. So you can decide like what are you most interested in looking at. You can narrow down these characteristics that I've given you. You can add more characteristics. You can spend however much time you want doing this. And I hope you enjoy. This is like, I'd really love to hear back about this one to see how much people actually like doing this sort of activity. If this is something that you're interested in doing more of in the future, or if it was a little bit like not your cup of tea. Kind of helps me figure out what kind of programming works the best. It's hard because we're not all together and I can't see you actually doing these. So if you get them all finished and pasted on, send us a picture, drop them off by the library. I'd love to see what you put together. Until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful September day. All right, bye.